Welcome back to another video tutorial brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com. Today I'm going to show you how you can take a photograph and turn it into a comic style image like this relatively easily and quickly. And it's in the style of pop art. And the first thing you want to do is you're going to decide on how you want to trace the lines. So you're going to just create the contour line drawing of the image. You can use the pen tool in Photoshop if you want, or you can use a brush if you have a pressure sensitive tablet. I like to use Illustrator if you have Illustrator, and I just use the blob brush tool to make my lines. That gives me a variety of line quality. Then you're going to bring your image over into Photoshop, and we'll put that line drawing aside. You can save it somewhere on your desktop, and we'll come back to it in just a minute. First thing you want to do is duplicate your first layer. I'm going to name this layer Ben-Day Dots in honor of Roy Lichtenstein. And then I'm going to use a polygonal lasso tool, and I'm just going to cut out around the figure. And of course this is sped up, so don't let that discourage you. Then we'll go up to Edit and Select, I'm going to select Inverse, and that's going to allow me to select the areas around the object. Then I'm going to go to Edit, Cut, and I'm just going to cut those areas out. To show you what I've done, I'll hide my first layer and show you that I have cut all the areas around the figure. So the next thing you're going to need to do is make sure you're on the Ben-Day Dots layer and go to Adjustments, and under Adjustments select Threshold, and you can slide the little slider back and forth and create a nice little threshold there. You want to be able to see all the features. You don't want it to just look like a mess. So that looks pretty good there. And once you got it where you want it to be, click OK. Next thing you want to do is add a little bit of blur to that, little Gaussian blur. And you can play around with it. I'm going to leave mine at 14.8. You want it pretty blurry. That's going to help us with our dots when we make them in just a few minutes. Now the next thing you want to do is right click on that layer and duplicate that layer. You want to choose the destination for this document to be a new document, and you can name it whatever you want. In this case I'm going to name it Ben-Day Dots. And now we actually have two files open. There's one and there's the other. And on this file we're going to go up and we're going to change the mode. So we'll go up to Image Mode, and we're going to change it to grayscale first. Discard. Yes. Then we're going to go back up to Image again. This time we're going to select Bitmap under Mode. Flatten Layers, okay. And the method, make sure you have chosen halftone screen. And then the frequency, that's how many dots per inch we're going to have. And you're going to want to make sure that they are round dots. Not diamond dots, but round ones. But you can change it to all these other things. But for this, of course, round works best. And there you go. So it kind of gives you a printed look, like it might be printed in a newspaper, like an old-timey comic. Then we're going to go back and we're going to change our modes back to where they were before. Make sure the size ratio is on 1 when you change it back from bitmap into grayscale, and then grayscale back into RGB mode. Now we're going to right-click on that layer. We're going to duplicate it. Our destination for this duplicated layer is going to be Avery, which is our original file. Click OK, and I've already named that layer Dots. You can see them together. Now we're going to create a clipping mask between the dots layer and the Ben-Day Dots layer. To do that, hold down Alt until those two little circles pop up. Click right there between them. Then hit Control E to merge those layers together. Now I'm going to create a new layer, and this time it's going to be just a fill color. And I'm going to pick a nice blue-green for that. I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and hit it with the paint bucket. And there we go. Now we've got our fill color. Now before we go any further, we need to bring in that line drawing that you did earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my line drawing in from Illustrator. Since I did mine in Illustrator, you did yours in Photoshop. You may have it laying around somewhere. Also, it's important to make sure that your background contents is transparent for your line drawing. That automatically happens in Illustrator, but in Photoshop you have to choose that. So I've brought the Illustrator file over into Photoshop, and I'm going to copy it and paste it into our file, which is named Avery. And when you copy and paste anything in Photoshop, it creates its own layer, so I won't have to worry about making a new layer. This time it's layer 2. And I'm going to pull it up to the top of the layer order. Then I'm going to use the Move tool and try to match it up with the dots that I've already got on my surface. And that looks pretty close. And I'll go around and check and make sure that it looks pretty good in all the areas. Looks pretty close. All right, we're going to be using our Ben-Day Dots layer quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that layer. Now we're going to create a series of clipping masks, and to do that I'm going to go ahead and create a solid fill color, and I'm going to select the skin tone that I think would be nice. Now remember, you can always go back and change this color later, so it doesn't really, it matters, but you don't have to get too picky with it. And like I said, we're creating a clipping mask, and we're going to be using that Ben-Day Dots layer that we created earlier for the clipping mask. So now we've got our fill color. Now we need to pull the Ben-Day Dots copy layer on top of that, and now it's on top of it. Now we're going to hold down Alt and click in between those two layers, and what's going to happen is it's going to create a clipping mask. I'm going to go ahead and fill in that square with a black paint. So I just used the paint bucket, fill that into black. Now I can go up here to the top and I can go ahead and click Alt while I click those two layers together. You can see I've created a clipping mask now. That's with the little arrow that comes out from that. That lets me know it's a clipping mask. I'm going to set my layer option to that to soft light. And then I'm going to click on the black arrow again, select white, and then I'm going to paint with the paintbrush. Now the way the clipping mask works is white reveals and black hides, and you can see in your layer menu that everywhere I'm painting with the white paintbrush, a little bit of a white is showing through the clipping mask. What it's doing is it's allowing the color that I used for the fill to show through that clipping mask. So I'm going to go ahead and paint all the areas with the white brush. I'm going to paint all the areas that I want the skin tone to be showing. Okay, so after I've done that, I can go up to Adjustments, and if I want to play with the brightness and contrast, I can. Make sure that your Use Legacy button is clicked, and I'm just going to turn the contrast down because what I had before was a little bit too high in contrast. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do this for every color that I want to add to the image. So I'll need to copy the Ben-Day Dots copy layer that I used. Again, put in that solid color fill and select what color you want to use. In this case, I'm going to do the yellow hat next. So I'll select a yellow. Then I need to pull the layer order so that the Ben-Day Dots copy's on top. The next thing I'll do is hold down Alt and click those two together to create the clipping mask. I'll click on the actual mask itself and paint it black with the paint bucket. And then I'll set my top layer to soft light. Then I'll choose the white paintbrush, and with the brush I'm going to paint all the areas that I want the yellow to show through. Again, make sure you click on that little black square that you've created in your layers to create that clipping mask. So after I have filled in the yellow hat completely, this is what we've got. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to repeat that process for every color that we use. So we'll duplicate the Ben-Day Dots layer. In this case, I need to release that clipping mask and insert a new solid color fill. And this time we'll do white. We'll do the white areas. And we're going to go ahead and change our layer order again. We'll pull that white layer behind the Ben-Day Dots copy that we've created. Again, we'll create that clipping mask by holding Alt and clicking right between the two layers, painting that square black, and then again choosing the white brush, making sure that we've got white paint on our brush. I'll zoom in for this, and I'm going to paint the areas that I want to be white. And again, we're just painting on the clipping mask, so we're allowing the color to show through. Just like that. Now I've completed the image, and I will show you my layer order here. And on each layer, I've just repeated that process where I have created a clipping mask and just copy the dots layer each time and done a fill color, and then actually subtracted the clipping mask to reveal the color that I created. Sounds a bit complicated, but once you get kind of in the rhythm of things, it's not too difficult. Now the next thing we're going to add is we're going to add a little bit of a pattern behind this to make it more interesting, and it's going to be very easy to do. We're going to just click on the custom shape tool over here in your tools, and if you go up to the top, you can find whatever shape you'd like to put in the background. If you're using Photoshop CS4, you'll have this shape available to you, and this is the one that I'm going to use. I'm going to change the color to a lighter blue, so I'll click on the blue in the background and then just change the value up a little bit. And then I'm just going to click and drag it out. And then I can just move it into place, like so. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the speech bubbles. And again, that's another shape. So you can choose whichever speech or thought bubble that you want. I'll choose that one. Make sure your colors are set on the foreground color white, and you can go ahead and pull that out. And I'm going to go ahead and put that at the very top of the layer order. I'm also going to put a stroke on that. And let's see, 13 pixels looks good. And you can also edit and transform it and flip it around if you would like, and I'm doing that here. And then I'll move it into place. And of course you can type whatever you want in there. I'm using the Comic Sans font, but there's some really great fonts available on the internet. Make a good point size that's a little bit better. And we'll make sure that these are all capitalized so it's really got that comic feel. Make that a little bit smaller. And now the journey is complete. You have created a Liechtenstein-inspired pop art from a photograph. It is a complicated process, but the results are pretty cool. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial brought to you by thevirtualinstructor.com.